Clara was 24 when she moved into the quiet apartment complex on the edge of the city. Life had never been easy for her. She had lost her parents young and learned to fend for herself early on. Working at a small bakery downtown, she made just enough to cover rent and buy groceries, but her heart had always been richer than her pockets. She believed kindness was a gift that cost nothing but could change everything. One chilly evening in early autumn, Clara was carrying a bag of groceries up the worn steps to her apartment when she noticed him. An old man sat hunched over on the porch of the neighboring unit, staring at the ground. His gray hair was messy, his cardigan looked thin against the biting wind, and his hands trembled as if weighed down by years of solitude. Clara paused. Most tenants walked past him without a word, treating him as though he were invisible, but Clara couldn't. She smiled and offered a gentle, "Good evening." The man looked up, startled at first, then nodded faintly without saying a word. Clara felt a tug at her heart. She reached into her grocery bag and pulled out a loaf of fresh bread she had brought home from the bakery. Holding it out, she said, "I baked this today. Would you like some?" His tired eyes softened, and with shaky hands, he accepted. That small exchange was the beginning of something neither of them expected. The next day, Clara prepared an extra plate of stew after work. She knocked on his door, and when he answered, his face lit up with a mix of surprise and gratitude. He invited her inside, hesitantly at first, but soon enough, it became routine. Every evening, Clara arrived with a plate of food, sometimes pasta, sometimes soup, sometimes just simple sandwiches, and they sat together at his little kitchen table. He introduced himself as Mr. Howard. The walls of his home were bare, the furniture old, yet there was a quiet dignity in the way he carried himself. Over steaming bowls of food, he told her stories of his younger days, how he used to work as an engineer, how he loved books and music, and how life had slowed to a crawl since his wife passed years ago. What struck Clara most, though, was the loneliness in his voice. He admitted that the days felt endless, the silence unbearable. For Clara, listening came naturally. She had spent most of her life without anyone to share her own burdens with, so she knew how heavy it was to be unheard. In Mr. Howard, she didn't just see a frail old man, she saw someone who needed to feel valued, remembered. And in Clara, Mr. Howard found a warmth he hadn't felt in years, a reminder that kindness still existed in the world. As the weeks passed, their bond grew. Neighbors noticed Clara's visits but dismissed them with muttered comments about her wasting her time. Clara didn't care. Each evening, when she knocked on Mr. Howard's door and saw his eyes brighten, she knew she was doing something that mattered. Little did she know, those simple dinners would change not only his life, but hers, in ways she could never imagine. The weeks turned into months, and Clara's quiet acts of kindness became part of the rhythm of Mr. Howard's life. Each evening, she appeared at his door with a meal and a smile, and each evening, he welcomed her like a cherished guest. Sometimes they ate in silence, other times they lingered for hours, talking about everything from books to memories of his youth. Clara began to notice how the old man seemed to grow stronger, livelier, as if her presence gave him energy. Yet beneath his stories and laughter, there was always something unsaid. His eyes often wandered to a framed photograph on the shelf, a much younger man in a graduation gown, his arm proudly around a smiling father. Clara noticed it many times but didn't want to pry. Still, the mystery lingered in her mind. One rainy night, while thunder rolled in the distance, Clara set a steaming bowl of chicken soup in front of Mr. Howard. He stared at it for a moment before speaking, his voice quieter than usual. "Clara," he said, "have I ever told you about my son?" Clara shook her head gently. "No, you haven't, but I'd like to hear." His hand trembled as he lifted his spoon, though he didn't take a bite. Instead, he sighed heavily, the weight of years pressing down on him. "He was my pride and joy," Mr. Howard said. "Brilliant, ambitious. He wanted to conquer the world, and I believed he could. But the higher he climbed, the further he drifted from me. It's been years since we last spoke." Clara felt her throat tighten. "Do you know where he is now?" Mr. Howard nodded faintly. "I know. He's successful, very successful. But I think he's forgotten what it means to come home." His eyes glistened as he whispered, "Maybe one day, he'll remember I exist." The words pierced Clara's heart. She reached across the table, taking his hand in both of hers. "Even if he forgets, I won't," she said softly. "You're not alone anymore." From that night on, Clara became more than just a kind neighbor. She became his caretaker in ways she never expected. When Mr. Howard's cough grew worse, she rushed to fetch medicine. When he was too weak to cook, she made sure he had hot meals ready. When he felt dizzy, she insisted he see a doctor, even paying for the appointment when he couldn't afford it. Her coworkers at the bakery noticed her exhaustion, asking why she spent so much time with an old man who wasn't even her relative. But Clara brushed off their comments. He needs someone, she would say. And if not me, then who? One evening, after a long day at work, Clara climbed the steps to his porch, balancing a casserole dish in her hands. But as she approached, she froze. A sleek black car was parked outside Mr. Howard's home, its polished surface gleaming under the streetlight. Standing at the door was a tall man in an expensive suit, flanked by two assistants who carried themselves with the air of importance. Clara's heart skipped. She watched as the man raised his hand, hesitating before knocking on the door. His posture was confident, but there was tension in his shoulders, as if this visit weighed heavily on him. Clara didn't know who he was, but everything about him screamed wealth and power, so unlike the simplicity of Mr. Howard's life. Moments later, the door opened, and Clara's world shifted. Mr. Howard's tired face lit up with recognition, and his trembling voice carried into the night. Nathan. The suited man's expression cracked, his eyes glistening. Hello, Dad. Clara stood frozen on the porch, clutching the casserole dish to her chest. She hadn't expected the mysterious man in the sleek suit to be Mr. Howard's son, let alone the elusive Nathan he had spoken of with such longing and sadness. She had seen Nathan Howard's face before, plastered across magazines at the bakery counter and on TV screens in shop windows. He wasn't just wealthy, he was a household name, one of the youngest billionaires in the world, a man who built empires while most people his age were still searching for their place. And yet, here he was, standing in his father's doorway with tears glistening in his eyes. Hello, Dad, Nathan repeated, his voice breaking. Mr. Howard's frail frame trembled as he stepped forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. After all these years, you came back. His voice was raspy, but it carried both joy and hurt. Nathan didn't hesitate. He closed the gap between them and gently embraced his father, lowering himself as if the act itself were an apology. Clara, unsure if she should intrude, quietly set the casserole dish on the porch rail. She turned to leave, but Nathan's voice stopped her. Wait. She turned, meeting his gaze for the first time. His expression was raw, vulnerable, so different from the polished, untouchable image she had seen on magazine covers. Are you the one who's been looking after my father? He asked softly. Clara nodded. I just brought him meals. Kept him company. Nathan swallowed hard, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, suddenly looking much younger. You did more than I ever did. I thought he didn't need me anymore. I was wrong. Mr. Howard reached for Clara's hand, giving it a squeeze. She's been my angel, he whispered. Over the next few days, Nathan stayed close. At first, Clara kept her distance, unsure of where she fit into this fragile reunion. But Nathan sought her out repeatedly. He asked her about his father's health, his daily routines, his favorite meals, the things he should have known himself. Each time, guilt shadowed his face, and Clara saw a man burdened not by his billions, but by the time he could never get back. One afternoon, Nathan found Clara sitting on the porch, watching the autumn leaves fall. He sat beside her, his suit jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up, more human than she had ever imagined him to be. I don't know how to thank you, he said quietly. You gave my father love when I gave him absence. You gave him care when I gave him excuses. That's something money can't repay. Clara shook her head. I didn't do it for repayment. He just needed someone to be there. Nathan's eyes softened. That's what makes it extraordinary. In the weeks that followed, Nathan arranged for full-time care for his father, ensuring he would never be alone or neglected again. But he also insisted Clara remain close, offering her opportunities she never dreamed of, scholarships, business connections, even the chance to expand her passion for baking into something far greater. Clara hesitated at first, uncomfortable with the idea of gaining from her kindness. But Mr. Howard himself urged her on. You gave when you had little, he told her, and that is the truest kind of giving. Now let life give back to you. What began as simple meals shared between a lonely old man and a kind young woman had grown into something neither could have predicted, a bridge between a father and son, a lesson in the power of presence, and a reminder that the smallest act of kindness can echo into lives far beyond our own.